Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you just got here, welcome to the NTCA Tile Council of North America main stage demonstrations. I'm Andy Acker with Schluter Systems. I'm the Director of Education for North America. I'm not going to do any work. I've got somebody to do that, which is really a luxury. I've got EJ up here. He's the one who's actually going to work. I'm just going to stand here and look pretty. Well, he looks pretty too, but he's going to work and look pretty, so he's going to do double work. All right, so what are we going to do? You saw from the marquee when you came in, it said Curbless, right? Curbless with a big exclamation point, because Curbless is what the consumer's wanting right now. They want to do away with the curb, they want to do away with the shower door, and they want to carry that tile that's on their bathroom floor right into that shower, don't they? They want to do away with those things. What are some of the other design elements they want? They like niches in the walls. They want benches so that they can sit down or hoist their leg up to shave or whatever. There's lots of things. So what we're going to do here is we're going to show you a couple of new components that are giving us the ability to do this even quicker than before, and then some of the other stuff you've kind of known about if you're familiar with Schluter at all. So Schluter Systems does make all kinds of installation systems for tile and stone. We're going to show you a few different ones here. So first thing we want to talk about, I can see EJ wants to put that piece of subfloor down, but we wanted to show you, if you can take a look up there, of our detail on how to recess the floor. Typically, your subfloor is about 3/4 of an inch thick, and it's set on top of all your joists, your framing system for the floor structure. But what we've done is we've actually recessed that down 3/4 of an inch. So we're taking the subfloor off the top of the joists, and we're putting it between the joists and setting it on new surface ledgers, and you can see the blocking and the ledgering that goes on in there. So that's what we're doing there. We do have that detail in our current shower system installation handbook showing you how to actually frame that out if you want to do that. That could be new construction. That can also be retrofit on an existing home. So why are people liking this walk-in shower, this curbless shower? A lot of time it's a necessity. Maybe they have an ability or disability that requires that they have that kind of shower. Other times it could be simply a design element. We're finding that a lot, that people just like that design. The open floor plan that's so popular in the home is also carried into the bathroom, and this is what they want, so we put that down. So this is how we're going to recess that, and 3/4 of an inch is going to be plenty for us with our new foam trays. We've had trays on the market for years, but a couple of differences now. We've made them even thinner than they've ever been, but they still have the slope required to get the water down to the drain, to the centralized drain. But we've also put the Kerdi directly on them. Now, if you don't know what Kerdi is our membrane that we have on the market for over 30 years now. It's 8 mils thick. Now, a mil is not an abbreviation for a millimeter. A mil is 1/1000th of an inch. So this is 8 1/1000ths of an inch thick. And on each side of that polyethylene, you see a polypropylene fleece. That's what you're actually touching and feeling. That's what gives the Thinset, the grab, the ability to hold, mechanically fasten onto the Kerdi. So we're going to use that on the substrate, and we'll use it to actually bond the tile when you would go to tile that. So we've actually applied that onto the tray already. This tray started life as, what, a 48 by 48 perhaps, I believe. So we've cut it down substantially because this is a show and we're not doing a big shower. And can you imagine if we had to build a whole shower in front of you here on a whole bathroom? So very abbreviated version of a big, but you can nonetheless see that the tray's in here. So what's Ernie doing? Well, looks like he's putting the Thinset on. But did you notice what he did before he put the Thinset on? He actually got a damp sponge and he wiped down that surface. Couple of reasons. There could be dust. There could be a residue that can contaminate your bond coat, your Thinset, or at least be a bond breaker on there. So you wanted to get all that off of there. So he wiped down the walls to make sure it's nice and clean. The other thing he did, this substrate that we're showing right here is drywall. And that isn't even a water-resistant rock, is it? That's just a regular old drywall. You can use regular drywall, you can use water-resistant rock, you can use concrete backer board, you can use fiber cement backer board, you could be over brick or block, any kind of masonry. All those that I just listed are suitable backings behind Kerdi. This happens to be just drywall. A lot of those can be very thirsty. So the other reason you wipe down, besides getting residue and bond breaker off, you want to give that surface a little drink of water. So its first drink of water isn't the water in your Thinset, in your bond coat. So he wiped that down. And you can see he's made a terrible mess on the floor. Anybody see that kind of process where you just dump it out onto the floor and lift it up the wall? Must be an old mud guy here from back in the mortar bed days with the hawk and the trowel. But anyway, you can see the Thinset. A couple things about the Thinset I should mention. One, it's in a very loose consistency. Typically, your Thinset is much stiffer than that when you're setting tile, right? You need it stiffer because you're going to use a fairly large notch trowel and you need those ridges to stand proud. Here, what we need out of this Thinset is to have it fairly loose. The reason being, we want it to work its way into the fleece that's on the Kerdi. We want it fairly liquid so it can work its way in there. The other thing, and you'll see when he lays up the Kerdi on here, he's going to want to knock down those ridges and evacuate any excess out, which is not really that big of a deal, and get any air out from there. So the looser it is, the better it's going to be, and the nicer it's going to be for him to do that. So you can see he's put that on the wall. The other thing you notice he did once he wiped it down, he took the flat side of his trowel and he keyed in or burned the Thinset into the substrate with the flat side of the trowel. That's tile setting 101, folks. You need to do that to make certain you're going to get a good grab of your bond coat right into that substrate with that Thinset. Then he spread the Thinset all out, still with the flat side of the trowel. And then the last thing he did is he flipped the trowel around to the notch side and he gauged how much Thinset he was leaving on the substrate, on that surface there. It's a very small amount of Thinset required to put the Kerdi on. Matter of fact, the trowel he's using is 1/8 by 1/8 square notches on the tooth side. That's all the gauge is. You could use a 3/16 V notch, which is a pretty common trowel. Either one's going to give you the adequate amount of Thinset you want in place. So now he's doing the second wall the same way he's doing the first wall. So before we get to that, I want to show you something else. Let's see a show of hands. Any of you familiar with Schluter systems and our Kerdi product? Okay, quite a few of you. You're probably used to seeing it in the meter wide roll, right? It's been coming in the market for over 30 years now at about a meter wide, 39 5/8 of an inch. Well, now this is a fairly new product for us, just out a few months. It's our 2 meter wide roll. You can see it's all continuous, which is going to give EJ the ability to cover all of that substrate surface very quickly. It's going to be able to get all the waterproofing on the walls in a matter of a couple of minutes. No extra seams, and it's going to happen very fast. Now, at 8 mils thick, you can see that this stuff is very pliable. It's very loose, it's very lightweight, it's not going to fight you and try to pull off the wall, and it's going to take inside and outside corners with very crisp lines. It can fold nicely and easily, so that's a real big benefit. At this mil thickness, folks, it's completely waterproof, and it also works for steam rooms, so it's also your vapor barrier. Vapor barriers are very important these days because of how we build our homes. Energy efficiency is the utmost importance in building our homes these days, so we've made our houses tighter and tighter through the years. What that's actually introduced to us in the tile industry is a challenge. Now we need to put a vapor barrier on, oh, you need to work, you go ahead. You need to put a vapor barrier on the surface to keep not only the moisture, the liquid water from getting through, but the vapor drive from penetrating too fast and accumulating moisture content into the wall cavity. So that was never an issue before when our houses were old and drafty and we got air moving through them on its own. Okay, so play by play. You can see what EJ did. He just placed that up there, got it generally in place where he wants it. He followed the plumb line out here on this front edge here. Got that pretty much placed, and then he's just sort of putting in place, just loosely, getting a general idea where he wants to put it in there. You can see again, very simple to apply. The Thinset is clinging nicely. The membrane's fairly thin, so that's not an issue at all. So now you can see he's using a couple of wallboard blades, something you would typically use if you were a drywall or a taper. That's certainly okay that he prefers that, so you could use that. You could certainly use a steel trowel, a finish trowel from either tile or concrete finish work. You could use the flat side of his notch trowel too, any of those trowels, and all he's doing is he's just firmly embedding the Kerdi into that Thinset And now he's knocking down the ribs, which you can kind of see because of the opaque quality of the Kerdi. You can kind of see the ribs, so he's knocking down all the ribs from gauging the thinset thickness with the notch trowel, and he's working out any air bubbles or blisters that might be in there to get them all out to the edge. So that's all it's going to take to waterproof these walls. Nice thing about this stuff, folks, is not only is it suitable over all kinds of different substrates, like you're seeing here, including drywall, but you don't have any drying time over mortars. You can put it on directly and immediately after that. There's no curing time for this. You don't have to build it up to any certain thickness like a liquid applied. It comes off the roll from the manufacturer at the right mill thickness, consistent across the whole roll, so you don't have to be concerned about that. So it's very quick, very easy, and actually not a lot of mess. Even Ernie here isn't making very much mess out of it, is he? EJ's been pretty clean so far. You can see that he's got his good dress pants on, so he's going to try to keep those clean because I know he's going to catch a bunch of it if he gets home and those pants are ruined, huh? All right, so there you go. So now the walls are waterproof. They're ready to go. This wall's wagging around quite a bit here, EJ. It's kind of like real life, isn't it, when you get to a job site? They're about like this, aren't they? Like that? Okay, so anyway. So we got that in place. You can see how fast we could waterproof the walls with that product. So that's just one of the components. Now, I talked about what are we going to do, the bench next? Okay, so as he's getting ready to put this bench in, I should tell you about that material. Now, if you're familiar with our products at all, you know that Kerdi is a family of products, and we have another product called Kerdi-Board. Now, Kerdi-Board, it comes in various thicknesses, and you'll see that here. This happens to be our 1/2-inch thick Kerdi-Board, which of course would take the place of the drywall or concrete backer board or anything like that. The benefit of it is it's foam core, so it's very light. It's waterproof, all three components. The foam core, the reinforcing facer layer, and the fleece that's on it are all waterproof. So completely waterproof, won't warp, won't rot, dimensionally stable, which means it won't change dimension to heat or moisture, and it has no fiberglass in it, no cementitious material in it, so you don't have to worry about the dust and the inhalants and so forth. So it's a very nice board for that. So we could use that in place of the drywall. Nice thing about that is, if we didn't have anything on the studs to begin with, why would we put drywall on there and then cover it with Kerdi when we could actually just use Kerdi-Board, right? So that's an option too. So what we're doing here is we're going to build just a tiny little bench. Again, we're limited to the size that we can build here at the show. So we use some of our 2-inch block here, cut 4 blocks, the same size. Oh, you need those? So we cut 4 blocks. That's going to be the support for the top of the bench and for the face of the bench. So we're going to put one at each end and a couple of intermediate in the middle, and that's what's going to support our block. I mean our bench top and our face. So the bench top is made out of 2-inch board. It could have been 1.5-inch board because we do make an 1.5-inch board. So he's going to put that in place here. Now the caulking he's using is called Kerdi-Fix. That's something that we make at Schluter Systems, Kerdi-Fix. It's a silane-based polymer, modified polymer. In other words, it's kind of like a urethane type. Has no VOCs at all. Has unbelievable strength and hold, and will cure out even underwater if you need it to, but it's very high quality caulking by us at Schluter. So that's what he's using. He could use the same thinset that he used to do the rest of the application, so you don't really have to switch over to it. You could use some of one, some of the other, all of it. It doesn't matter to us, either way you like to do it. So 1/2-inch facer that's on there, and then the 2-inch or 1.5-inch for the top. So that's the bench. Now if you think about that, if you build a bench out of traditional materials, what have you got? You might have metal framing, you might have wood framing, and then you have to sheathe it with what? Backer board or some plywood or perhaps, but all of those products, if you think about it, are moisture sensitive building materials, and you're introducing them right into the wet area. It's a much better bet to use something like this that is not going to be adversely affected by the moisture content that's going to be in the shower area. So keep that in mind, that we're introducing nothing that's going to be vulnerable or susceptible to moisture content. So that's one of the reasons why the Kerdi-Board looks so good. Not only is it lightweight, very strong, easy to cut, quick to install. I know that's a very small bench. I don't know if anybody could actually, maybe one of these little ones could get on that bench and it would be adequate for them. But nonetheless, you can see how you could build one. Again, we're limited to space, so we built it very small. All right, so Tray? All right, I'm trying to be a good helper. For all you tile setters, how many steps ahead is a good helper from the installer, right? You say 3? Yeah. I don't think we can get a helper to be 2 steps ahead of us anymore, can we? I go with 2 these days, but you're right. When I learned the trade back in the 70s, mid-70s, I had to be 3 steps ahead of my boss, right, when I was a helper. Anyway, I'm not even 1 step ahead of EJ, so I'm not doing any better. Anyway, so here's the tray. Again, it all slopes down to the center section, and you can see that there's a couple of recesses in here. Have you got the supports over there? Where are the support metal pieces? You know where those are? They're not in the box. Do you see them, Matt? Are they underneath this Kerdi or Detra? Nope. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, we're missing a couple pieces. Anyway, we'll grab them. We'll grab another set here somewhere. I'll go look for it. What? Okay. All right, well, I'm not going to work. Do you really expect me to get on that trowel or anything like that? You want to see that? Nobody wants to see that. It's been a number of years since I've been off. Hey, there's one of them. Oh, that's a third of one. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Okay, well, that's good enough. We can show them what it is. That's unfortunate that it looks like it's gotten stepped on. I think we need a forensic person up here to look at that shoe print, and we're going to trace them down, find out whose shoe that was. You want to guess who it was? Maybe some of our competition? I see Weedy was here doing their curbless shower just about 2 segments ago. I think I'm going to go pay them a visit. I'll bring EJ with me. I think that'll be better, right? Or Moose and Rocco. Hey, look what you got. This is the condition of the one that we had back there. All right. Now, back to the game. These are detachable. These actually come attached with 3 little tabs onto this tray. The reason they're detachable is you might have the plumber put the drain in already, and how are you going to get this underneath the drain when the drain's already hooked up to the plumbing in the floor? We make these detachable so you can actually apply Thinset on both sides of them and then slide them under the drain that's already in the hole on the floor. So that's why they're detachable. So that's why we did those to show you that. Now, you need the tray itself. Or here, take those too. You're gonna need all that, aren't you? So let's talk about the drain for just a minute. Well, anyway, you can see that this fits in here where it would be. And where's our donut? We're missing the donut too. You see this extra recess that's in here around this tray? That's to make room for this piece. Now, before we put the Kerdi on the tray, and you just used a big piece of Kerdi like that, this was already in, and then you covered the whole thing, and then you cut out around on this spot for the drain assembly, for the grate assembly, right? But since now that we put the Kerdi on the tray, we need to supply you with another piece so you can tie the waterproofing from this onto the waterproofing right here. And that's what this donut shaped piece is for. It's going to go into this recess right here. So Ernie's going to put that here. Let me give you something so you can keep working. There we go. Again, very thin tray, 3/4 of an inch recess is going to drop us in enough that we're almost flush with that substrate out here. But once we put our Detra heat mat, which we're going to show you here in a couple of minutes, abutted to it, we're now flush straight in. So you only have to drop 3/4 of an inch with this 48 by 48 tray or the 32 by 60. We just place it in a bond coat, 1/4 inch wide, 3/8 of an inch deep. Notch trowel is what we're using. That's a substantial amount of Thinset to put that in place. And then we can put the drain down in that recess. But again, the same process we saw earlier. So let me talk about this drain for just a minute here. Those of you that aren't familiar with Schluter systems or our products, we were the pioneer of the integrated bonding flange. Well over 10 years ago, we came out with this drain because Mr. Schluter, who was a tile setter, or used to be, he's 77 now, he's kind of pulled back a bit. He saw that all the drains afforded to us in the tile industry were from the plumbing industry. And they were all designed for the waterproofing to join to the drain under the mud bed, at the clamping ring under the mortar bed. He saw that we had Kerdi, and there were other waterproof membranes, surface waterproof membranes on the market, and they were really gaining popularity, weren't they? Liquid applied, trowel applied, sheet applied membranes are all there, and they're all designed to do what? Move the waterproofing up on top, and we bond the tile directly to the waterproofing, eliminating the saturated mortar bed and any possibility for the water to make its way through the assembly. But we didn't have a drain, and that's why Mr. Schluter came out with the Kerdi-Drain, the integrated bonding flange that actually allows us to tie in the waterproofing that's at the surface to the drain that's now at the surface. Now, Mr. Schluter was recognized by the National Tile Contractor Association and the Tile Council of North America. In 2015, he got the Joe A. Tarver Award for lifetime contributions to the tile industry. Those same awards are going to be awarded this very afternoon up on the 3rd floor outside this entrance here at 5:30. So they're going to give those awards out. I'm not sure who's getting the Joe Tarver Award, but we are very pleased that Mr. Schluter was recognized for bringing profiles, that edge protection and transition, bringing uncoupling membranes back to the market, or the idea of uncoupling, but in a membrane instead of a mortar bed, and an integrated bonding flange. He was recognized for all of those products, so definitely the pioneers of that product. So you can see he put that donut-shaped piece of Kerdi in there to seal up between the Kerdi that's on the tray and the bonding flange there. So now we've got a watertight seal. So we still have a couple of other places to do some waterproofing here yet, but as right now we're looking pretty good on that. So what do you want to do? You can do some you can do some waterproofing. All right. So if the drain's in when you get there, how did the plumber know where to set that drain? They're probably not very familiar with this type of system. They're familiar with the old drains that have been around for decades. So in the box that the drain comes in, you've got a sheet that says important notice for plumbers. So that would be important to give this to the plumber, along with that drain flange there, and also these shims. Now there's 2 sets of shims because we have a thin set for our really thin trays like this, and we have the thicker shims for our traditional trays that we have out there. So the instructions tell the plumber, slide these with that notch you see there, slide these onto the drain flange, and that gauges how far up off the floor the drain needs to be set. So the instructions, the drain flange, and the shims is all that you give the plumber. All the rest of the stuff you retain because it has the inside and outside corners and the mixer seal and pipe seal and the drain grate assembly. Very important that you don't give that to the plumber because I'll guarantee you it'll be lost by the time you show up as the tile setter because you're the one putting all those parts in. So that's how you know where to put it. So this was easy because we had the luxury to put the drain in on top of the tray after the tray was put in. In many cases, the plumber has done the drain during rough-in, so you're not there for quite some time after rough-in to do that. I could hand you do that. I can do something up here. I really can. Okay, so I'll just stay out of his way. All right, so EJ's going to start waterproofing or tying the waterproofing together. So we've waterproofed the walls. We've got the waterproofing on the tray. We've got the Kerdi board in to be used as the construction elements for the bench. So now we have to tie all that together to have a continuous waterproof envelope. That's always consistent with Schluter systems. We want the whole thing to be tied in, all the seams done before you ever start tiling. We want this thing all watertight. So you can see he's putting in some pieces of Kerdi-Band. Now, Kerdi-Band is very similar to Kerdi, but it's half the thickness. I said Kerdi is 8 mils thick. This is only 4 mils thick. Again, very lightweight, very pliable. It's easy to crease, and we know sometimes you're going to have to double some pieces up, and we don't want it to build up too thick, mostly if you have a small format tile where you use a very small notch trowel. We don't want the tile to rise up because it's sitting on Kerdi or Kerdi-Band. That's why we make it so thin like this. So you can see it goes in the same way as the Kerdi did on the walls. He's using that very small notch trowel, 8 by 8 square notch or 3/16 V notch. Thinset mixed to a fairly fluid consistency, and then he's placing the Kerdi in there and then firmly embedding the Kerdi into the bond coat, knocking down the ribs, evacuating out any excess Thinset and any air bubbles or blisters that is underneath the membrane. Same process on the back. He just folded it lengthwise, creased it a couple times so it had a little bit of a memory so he knows he's balanced the 5-inch band between the floor and the wall, or the bench top and the back wall. Schluter Systems always requires a minimum 2-inch overlap. This band is 5 inches wide, so if we fold it right down the middle, you guessed it, it's 2.5 inches on each side, so it exceeds our minimum requirements. So that's why we like using the 5-inch band. It does come in 7.5 and 10-inch wide for different applications besides. So we put that in place. Did you notice something that EJ did? He actually ran the face material, which is 1/2 inch thick, all the way to the top, and the 2-inch material fit inside of that. You think, well, that's kind of odd. Well, if we want a 2-inch overlap minimum, and we had 2 inches of foam already exposed, we would have to have how wide of a piece of band? 2 inches plus 2 inches plus 2 inches. We need 6, and this is 5. So he got smart, and he actually had the 1/2 inch foam board exposed, not the 2-inch board, so he could still use the 5-inch band. So he's definitely smarter than he, well, I won't say that. Anyway, okay, so I don't know what this piece is for, maybe the front edge there. We go to the Kerdi or the Detra. Okay, so while EJ's putting in some more of those inside and outside corner pieces and finishing up with the banding, I do want to show you a couple of other new things. We make a series of niches that come in certain sizes, and they have an adjustable shelf made out of Kerdi board. But a lot of the people that use them said Kerdi board shelf is fairly thick, and when you tile it, you lose a lot of your space inside the niche for your shampoo bottles. Can you make something that's narrower so we can have a shelf in our niche, but it doesn't take up so much space? Well, we've come out with our style grates, right? We have this new style in our grates, point drains and line drains, but now we have the shelves that come in those styles also, made out of, it's about 3/16 of an inch, 304 VA stainless steel, which is a high-grade stainless steel, brushed, and we have those different designs punched in there like that, so you can see that. So that will actually be your shelf in your niche. We have some other shelves besides, a few different shapes. I brought 2 of them up here. These different shapes, again, with the designs in there. Now, these install in the grout lines, and if you look at them, you can see the little tabs that are around the edges like there. Here's the inside corner one. You would just place those tabs into the grout line as you actually tile the bathroom. Well, how about if the bathroom's tiled, grouted, and people now have realized, your customer said, man, I really wish I had put a couple of shelves in there. You can use these as a retrofit shelf. You would just remove the grout just where the tabs are here and place this in there, and then do 100% clear silicone all the way around there, and that's what you hold it in place with. So again, these coordinate with the shelves that go in the niche and the drains, both point drains and line drains. So I brought you the 3 first line drain designs that we have on the market here. You can see these. This one's called Curve, and then this one's Floral, and this one's Pure. And this one's actually in the frame, but you could hardly notice that it's in the frame because the frame is so thin that fits into the floor there, into the drain body. Once you put the grate in there, you really can't see it at all. So again, heavy duty, thick, 3/16 stainless steel in these different finishes. We had a designer come by the booth here earlier, and she says, I don't call this one Curve, I forgot what it was called, so I call this Macaroni. I'm like, yeah, I guess it kind of does look like macaroni. We'll call this Macaroni. So if that one's macaroni, I responded to her, I said, I think we need to call this one Risotto then, because this looks a little more like a risotto here. And then she said, okay, well then this one's stuffed cannelloni. I'm like, all right, good. So we've got the pastas covered now, so we're good to go on that. So again, coordinated between the shelves, the corner shelves, the niche shelves, and then of course the point drains besides. I saw it here already. Oh, it's in here. It's in the bag where it should be. A couple of other items as EJ's working away there that we make. In the box that the drain comes in, you're going to get a couple of templates. That's the size of the hole we put in the Kerdi that goes over the top of the whole shower. There's another smaller template in here for the size hole you need in the subfloor to accept our drain and the body of our drain housing. That goes in there too. The instructions are in there to the plumber. There's a full set of installer instructions for the tile installer that come right there in the box. Inside and outside corners, pre-made, they're in the bag too, and this is where you're also going to find your drain assembly. So, here it is. Drain assembly, or the grate assembly, comes in 3 components. This one happens to be our pure design here. So I'll take that out of the plastic. This snaps on to this height adjustment collar. There's some little tabs on there that help it snap on. There we go. And then we have our lateral adjustment collar. The nice thing about this drain assembly, and tile setters certainly appreciate this drain grate assembly does not go in until the tile is set on the shower pan by the tile setter, which means the tile setter is in complete control of the pitch and the attitude of the grate. Not only is it square, so it's easier to cut around than a round one, but they're in charge of the pitch. Now, if the plumber still didn't even get that drain in straight, because I hear that happens once in a while, the plumber doesn't get the drain in perfectly level on the top, right? Has that ever occurred to you? Yeah? It's occurred to everybody, actually. So you can see here, we can actually correct it here in the drain grate assembly. So even if they get that wrong, we can still make it right on the top. So keep that in mind. Now, this will adjust for any tile thickness from a tile as thick as 1.5 inches thick can go adjacent to this, clear down to the thinnest mosaic on the market, and anywhere in between with this adjustable ring here. So keep that in mind, that it's adjustable for any type of, or any thickness of tile. So that will go in place a little later. A couple of other items here. Since we allow you to use gypsum, just regular old drywall, as one of the suitable backings for Kerdi, and then say we cut a hole or two in the Kerdi for the shower head and the mixer valve, we don't want to leave that vulnerable core, that gypsum core of the drywall, exposed for potential water. So you will actually get in the box with the drain this mixer valve seal right here. It has a polypropylene sleeve on it here that will actually go back into the wall cavity and cover up the vulnerable core of that drywall. And even if something drips on it, the water will come out because it tapers on the outside. And this is going to go in here like this. Same way with the thin set under it, like EJ's been showing you. Also, the one for the shower head looks a little bit different. One size fits all, if you will. Still has that neoprene here in the middle that stretches out to accommodate whatever size pipe you have on here. This is not only good for shower heads, but if you're building a steam room or a steam shower and you have any kind of piping, steam generated nozzle and those type of things coming through the wall, it's a good idea to seal those up because you don't want any steam getting into the wall cavity and accumulating and becoming moisture content. So of course, oh, okay, there you go. We didn't put the shower head in and we didn't put the mixer valve in because this is never going to get used, right? We're going to tear this down here in about the next 20 minutes and it'll be gone. But you get the idea that those go in place like that, and that seals those two up. So really a nice sealed up system. How are you doing, EJ? You got everything else done over there, huh? So we're ready for Detra? Yes. Looks like it. Okay, so Detra. Detra, again, is a family of products that we have. This is called Detra Heat. This looks a little bit different than our other Detras. That's because we've made it in a configuration that allows you to accommodate heating cable. If you think about the old days before we came out with this system, again, Schluter system being the pioneer of cable and mat systems, what did you have to do? You had to run the cable across the floor, hold it down with strapping or staples or grommets or something like that, and then once you got the cable down and got it laying flat to the floor and fought it down to lay flat, then you had to mix up a bunch of self-leveler compound and pour it over the top to encase the cable in at least 3/8 of an inch of self-leveler compound. Then you would let it dry for a day or two or three. Then you had that cable encased and you were ready to tile over the top of it. What Mr. Schluter did is he says, how about we change the configuration of Detra to be a studded pattern instead of a waffle grid like you might be familiar with, and then we can run the cable back and forth. So that's what we came out with a number of years ago, and this has really hit the market and made it very simple for the installer to offer in-floor heat and do it very quickly and efficiently. So Detra is a polyethylene membrane with cut back dovetails that allows the thin set to grab a hold of those things and not lift off. So that's how we attach the tile to the Detra, is via the Thinset grabbing a hold of this, of all the Detra mechanically. On the back side of it, there's another spun polypropylene fleece that again wicks the Thinset right up into it when it makes contact with the Thinset in that sort of consistency. So it's going to be bonded down quite well. Again, some mechanical fastening on the underside. So what we're doing with all the Detra family of products is we're reintroducing the concept and the function of uncoupling into a tile assembly. I don't want to bore you with all of the technical details, but basically tile work always had an uncoupling function when we placed it in a mortar bed. The mortar bed and the cleavage membrane below the mortar bed provided the mechanism for uncoupling, which means it isolated the tile from any of the physical dynamics and characteristics of the substrate below the mortar bed. That was a very key element to how those old tile jobs lasted so long. Well, we eliminated that when we went to thin-set mortar back in 1959. Well, it really didn't even gain traction in the 60s, but certainly in the 70s and 80s, and now currently it is the predominant method of installing tile. Spreading thin-set, setting the tile directly in the thin-set. Well, we did away with the mechanism for uncoupling, so Mr. Schluter again looked at it and said, how do we reintroduce uncoupling mechanism into our tile assembly, at the same time still providing people the opportunity to set tile in the thin-set method? And that's where Detra and Detra family came in. The first Detra came out in the US in 1987. So it's been around for quite some time. This one's just been a few years, but this is the Detra Heat. It does look a little bit different, but it does give us the capability of putting the cable throughout the floor. So we're just going to demo a little cable install, give you a general idea how quickly it goes in. This is a really small kit here. This covers 10.7 square feet. So very small footprint of that. We make them in various lengths, of course, to cover, square footage clear up to 300 feet if you need to. So small cable here. This is a cable that's actually 120 volt. We make them in 240 volt also, depending on how much you're trying to heat and what kind of amperage draw you have and so forth. So here's the cable. A couple things about the cable here. This big, thick black part does not generate any heat, and that does not go into the floor. That would not be easy to install in the floor. This is called the cold lead. This is the part that comes from the thermostat that's in the housing in the wall. It comes down the floor, down the wall, and then goes into the floor. Now, this little section right here is the cold lead splice. So basically, it takes the part that doesn't generate heat and connects it to the part that does generate heat, which is this thinner gray part here. Now this thin gray part fits perfectly into the studded pattern of there, and it just holds it in place. No grommets, no straps, no stapling it down, no need to encase it in a self-leveling. It just simply sits into the cable, it snaps in place, and then you spread thin-set over the top and set your tile. It's that simple to introduce in-floor heat into these assemblies. So, while I was talking about that, EJ did treat that last seam between the tray and the Detra out here. Think about that. Detra is not only an uncoupling membrane, but it's solid polyethylene sheathing, which means it's waterproof if we treat the seams. So now that we've eliminated the curb, we've got curbless in here, how important is it to now protect the floor outside of the shower? A lot more important than it was when we had a curb and a door, right? Back then you had an area that was traditionally wet and an area that was traditionally dry outside. But now that we've taken the curb and door away, we've kind of blurred that line now, haven't we? So we need to think about carrying the waterproofing to protect moisture-sensitive building materials outside the shower from ever seeing any water. So the Detra family of products do that too, along with the Detra Heat. Now you can see how quickly he can run the cable back and forth through there. We recommend about a 3-stud spacing to get that 10.7 square feet out of the spool, and that's going to give us the optimum amount of wattage per square foot to be energy efficient, but still efficient in keeping the floor warm. So keep that in mind. Now, what if you get to the end of the cable like EJ did and he's got a bunch of extra cable? Can you just cut the rest off? I think, okay, I'm glad I'm seeing a lot of people shake their head and say, no, you can't cut the cable. No, that changes the resistance, it changes the wattage output, and it's probably going to send a signal back to the thermostat saying there's a fault, and the thermostat's going to go into safety and shut the floor off. and it's going to be a nuisance tripping. So no, you can't cut the cable. But what we can do is we can change the spacing from every 3 studs to 3, 2, 3, 2 alternate stud spacing, and then you can use up more cable. Did you see how easy it was for EJ to pull it up and re-put it down? You know, you can't do that with anybody else's cable where you have to put it down with strapping and so forth. It's a nuisance to have to pull it up and re-space it when you get to the end. So very quickly, you can take the stuff and make it right, no matter what you want. Now, if you're on a slab, concrete slab, that slab wants to take a lot of those therms away from that cable as it's generating heat. So you might want to do 3, 2, 3 stud spacing from the beginning. When you get our catalog on our Detra heat, you'll see we have 2 tables. What cable size you need for your square footage at 3 stud spacing, and what cable you need for your 3, 2, 3 alternate stud spacing. Just keep that in mind. So away you go. You still end up with a tiny little bit of extra there. Pull it all up, start again. No, I'm just kidding. But he'll keep doing that too, by the way. He's kind of a perfectionist. He'll just keep working on it. Okay, so there you go. So that's the heat that goes in there. So we got a lot covered here in a pretty short amount of time. So it's only been, 35, 40 minutes since we started this thing. So you can see in a real life situation when you want to completely get a shower all waterproofed and prepped and ready for tile, that you're going to cut down on the amount of time you spend doing that. If you think about a traditional shower, whether it's a mortar bed or backer board on the walls and a pan liner with a pre-slope, with a pack inside and a curb and all those things, you can imagine how much quicker you can get all of that stuff done and prepared for tile. And then think about the functionality of this. This does not allow any water to get into the assembly to begin with at all. This is not a system that's designed to hold water and then evacuate it through secondary drainage like the traditional 2-stage drains with the weep holes and the pan liner and all that, right? That's not what the system is. The waterproofing's up on top. We're going to bond the tile directly to it, so there's very little to hold water on top of the membrane. Nothing gets through the assembly, so it's a fundamentally different way to address the moisture content in a shower. So keep that in mind, that the function here is also very superior, and it's a minimum amount of time it's going to take you to actually get this thing prepped and ready for tile. So there you go, folks. I think, are you done? You think so? It looks pretty done. Anybody want to come check his work? No? Nobody does? How many of you are tile setters out there? How many were thinking you could do it faster and better than him? Come on, you're tile setters. Yeah, see, there you go. Do you know our system? You do? You use it now? Okay, so maybe we could put 2 side by side in our booth and you guys could have a race. How's that? You would have done 3, 2, 3? The winner gets a job and the loser loses the job? Wait a minute, that's not very fair. That doesn't work. Hey, I can see your brothers over there really helping you out there, EJ. Well, let's give EJ a hand because he did a great job up there getting that all put together for us. Appreciated him working hard, and we appreciate all your time here. We sure appreciate it. Our booth is directly over here. You can't miss it. Schluter Systems, big orange thing, not too far away from here. So come on over and see us. Let us scan your badge if you want some information. You want to look at the system up close. We have a couple of demos over there we've done too, so you can look at those because we need to tear this out. And then we're going to have this gentleman. Tim, you want to come on up and do the drawing? We'll get out of your way.